I'm Marina, 35, a mother who thought she had it all until I returned from a business trip to find my 8-year-old daughter Lily calling me fake mummy. She hid behind my mother-in-law, insisting her real mother was gone. The confusion in her eyes turned my world upside down as I realized my husband's family had been systematically feeding lies to my child, convincing her I had abandoned her years ago. Before I tell you how I uncovered this horrifying betrayal, let me know where you're watching from and subscribe to follow my journey of fighting to reclaim my place in my daughter's heart. My story begins 7 years ago when I was working as a marketing executive for a growing tech company in Boston. I had always been ambitious, working hard to climb the corporate ladder while maintaining a fulfilling personal life. I believed I could have it all: the career and eventually the family I dreamed of. I met James at an industry conference in Chicago. He was presenting on digital innovation, and I was immediately drawn to his confidence and intelligence. We connected during the networking event afterward, and what started as professional admiration quickly blossomed into something more. Our conversations flowed effortlessly from marketing strategies to personal dreams, and by the end of the conference, we had exchanged numbers with promises to stay in touch. James lived in Boston too, which seemed like fate. We began dating, and within 6 months, I knew he was the one. He supported my career ambitions and shared my values about building a life together where we both could thrive professionally and personally. After a year of dating, James proposed during a weekend trip to Cape Cod, and I happily accepted. James came from a tight-knit family with traditional values. His parents, Eleanor and Richard, lived in a suburban neighborhood just outside Boston, in a house where James and his sister Amelia had grown up. When James first introduced me to his family, they welcomed me with open arms. Eleanor prepared an elaborate dinner and asked thoughtful questions about my life and career. Richard proudly showed me family photos and told stories of James as a child. Amelia, who was married with 2 children of her own, offered friendly advice about joining the family. Despite their warm welcome, I noticed subtle signs of their possessiveness toward James. Eleanor would casually mention how James always came home for Sunday dinners before meeting me. Richard would reminisce about father-son fishing trips that had become less frequent. These comments were always delivered with smiles, but the message was clear: they weren't entirely ready to share him. We married in a beautiful ceremony attended by both our families and close friends. I had lost my parents in a car accident during college, so my side was smaller, mainly consisting of my college friends and a few distant relatives. James's family compensated with their large, boisterous presence. Eleanor took charge of many wedding details, which I appreciated, given my busy work schedule, though some of my preferences were gently overridden in favor of family traditions. 2 years into our marriage, we welcomed our daughter Lily into the world. The moment I held her in my arms, I felt a love so profound it transformed me. James was an attentive father from the start, changing diapers and taking night shifts when he wasn't traveling for work. His job as a technology consultant required frequent trips, sometimes leaving me alone with Lily for days or weeks at a time. Lily was a bright, curious child with James's analytical mind and my creative spirit. I cherished our time together, establishing special traditions like Sunday morning pancake breakfasts, where we would experiment with different shapes and toppings. We had mother-daughter spa nights where we would put on face masks and I would paint her tiny nails while we talked about her day. Every night, I sang the same lullaby my mother had sung to me, a connection to the grandmother Lily would never know. As Lily grew, so did my responsibilities at work. When Lily was around 4, I was offered a promotion that would advance my career significantly, but would require occasional travel. James encouraged me to take the opportunity, assuring me we would make it work as a family. During those early years, James's family, particularly Eleanor, became increasingly involved in our lives. At first, their help seemed like a blessing. When both James and I were busy with work, Eleanor would offer to take Lily for the weekend. Richard built a playhouse in their backyard, specifically for her. Amelia's children, who were a few years older than Lily, doted on their little cousin. Eleanor would often make comments about how fortunate Lily was to have a grandmother so involved in her life, given that my parents weren't around. While the comments stung, I appreciated her love for my daughter and saw it as a gift that Lily would have grandparents who adored her. There were occasional tensions, particularly around parenting styles. Eleanor would question my decisions, suggesting that perhaps I was too permissive, or that I should be spending more time at home rather than advancing my career. These comments were always framed as helpful advice from someone with more experience, making them difficult to counter without seeming defensive. James would often mediate these situations, assuring me that his mother meant well while gently explaining to Eleanor that we had our own parenting approach. These moments of tension were balanced by genuine affection and support, creating what I believed was a normal, if sometimes complicated, extended family dynamic. When Lily started kindergarten, I received an exciting opportunity for advancement at work. The position would establish me as a leader in my field, but would require more responsibility and occasional international travel. James and I discussed it extensively, weighing the benefits against the challenges of balancing family life. James was supportive, reminding me how hard I had worked for such an opportunity. He assured me that between him and his family, Lily would be well cared for during my absences. Eleanor immediately offered to step in whenever needed, expressing how much she would love the extra time with her granddaughter. With this support system in place, I accepted the position, believing we had found a balance that would allow both my career and family to flourish. Little did I know that this decision would set in motion a series of events that would nearly destroy the life I had built. After 6 months in my new role, I was scheduled for my first major business trip to London. It was a 2-week conference and meeting schedule with potential international clients, an opportunity to expand our company's global presence. Though excited professionally, I felt the familiar tug of maternal guilt about leaving Lily for so long. In preparation, I created special gifts for Lily to open each day of my absence. Small presents like hair clips, stickers, and tiny stuffed animals were wrapped with notes expressing my love. I recorded video messages for her to watch before bedtime, singing our special lullaby and telling her about my day. I arranged the school schedule and her after-school activities, leaving detailed notes for James and Eleanor, who would be sharing childcare responsibilities. The day before leaving, I took Lily for a special mother-daughter day. We went to the Children's Museum, had lunch at her favourite restaurant, and bought matching bracelets to wear while we were apart. I explained that even when we couldn't see each other, we would still be connected. The first few days of my trip went smoothly. James and Lily would video call me in the morning Boston time before I headed into meetings. Lily would excitedly tell me about her day at school and show me art projects she had made. James assured me everything was fine at home and encouraged me to focus on my work. Around the 5th day, I noticed subtle changes in our calls. Lily seemed less enthusiastic, offering shorter responses to my questions. When I asked to speak with her alone, James would say she was busy or needed to get ready for school. The calls became shorter, with James doing most of the talking. By the end of the first week, my anxiety was growing. During one call, I heard Eleanor's voice in the background. But when I asked if she was there, James quickly said she had just dropped by to drop off some groceries. Lily appeared briefly looking confused when I mentioned the special gift she should have opened that morning. She glanced at someone off screen before saying thank you in a subdued voice. I called that evening to say goodnight, but James texted that Lily was already asleep. The next morning, our call was rushed, with James claiming they were running late for a special event at school that he had forgotten to mention. When I asked to speak with Lily that evening, he said she was staying at his parents' house because he had a late meeting. My mother's intuition was screaming that something wasn't right. I called Eleanor directly, who answered with surprise in her voice. "Yes, Lily is here," she said, her tone oddly formal. "She's having such a wonderful time. I didn't realize James told you she would be staying with us." When I asked to speak with Lily, Eleanor said she was in the bath, promising they would call before bedtime. That call never came, and my text to both James and Eleanor went unanswered until the next morning, when James apologized, claiming they had all fallen asleep watching a movie. Unable to shake my growing unease, I made the decision to cut my trip short. I rescheduled my remaining meetings and booked a flight home 2 days earlier than planned. I didn't tell James, wanting to surprise Lily and perhaps understand what was happening at home. When my taxi pulled up to our house, I noticed Eleanor's car in the driveway. I entered quietly, hearing voices from the kitchen. As I approached, I heard Lily's laugh, followed by Eleanor saying, "That's right, sweetheart. You're so smart to remember." I walked into the kitchen expecting joyful surprise. Instead, Lily's eyes widened with what looked like fear. She slid off her chair and moved behind Eleanor, peering at me cautiously. "Surprise! I'm home early," I exclaimed, setting down my bags and kneeling with open arms. Lily didn't move. Eleanor turned, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Marina, we weren't expecting you until Saturday," she said, placing a protective hand on Lily's shoulder. "I wanted to surprise you all," I replied, my eyes fixed on Lily. "Sweetie, aren't you going to give Mommy a hug? I've missed you so much." Lily shook her head, pressing closer to Eleanor. "You're not my real mummy," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Grandma told me my real mummy left a long time ago." The room seemed to spin as I struggled to comprehend what I'd just heard. Eleanor quickly intervened, her voice honeyed with concern. Oh dear, she's a bit confused. We've been reading stories about adopted children, and I think she's mixed up reality with fiction. Children have such vivid imaginations at this age. James entered at that moment, stopping short when he saw me. His expression shifted rapidly from shock to something I couldn't quite read before he composed himself. "Marina, you're back early," he stated flatly. "Lily, sweetheart." "This is your mother," he added, though his tone lacked conviction. Lily looked between the three adults, clearly distressed. "No, she's the fake mummy who's always going away. Grandma said my real mummy loved me, but she had to go far away." Eleanor quickly suggested taking Lily upstairs for a nap, claiming the excitement had overwhelmed her. James nodded, avoiding my stunned gaze as his mother led my daughter away. I heard Lily ask, "Is the fake mummy going to leave again soon?" as they climbed the stairs. I turned to James, demanding an explanation, but he deflected, claiming Lily was just confused from stories his mother had been reading to her. He suggested I was overreacting due to jet lag and stress from my trip. That night, I lay awake crying while James slept beside me, or pretended to. My mind raced through possible explanations, each more disturbing than the last. How could my daughter, who I'd spoken with daily during my absence, now believe I wasn't her real mother? The next morning, I tried again to connect with Lily. I made her favourite breakfast, arranging the pancakes into a smiley face, as I always did. When she came downstairs, she hesitated in the doorway, eyeing me warily. "Good morning, sweetheart," I said cheerfully, trying to mask my heartbreak. "I made your favourite." Lily sat at the table but wouldn't meet my eyes. She picked at her food silently. "I thought we could go to the park today, just you and me," I suggested. "Would you like that?" She shook her head. "I want Grandma," she whispered. James, who had been watching this interaction with uncomfortable silence, finally spoke. "Maybe give her some time, Marina. She's just confused right now. Mum will be over later to help out." Later that day, while Lily was napping, I went into her room to leave one of the gifts I had brought back from London. On her bedside table was a drawing that made my blood run cold. It showed 3 figures labelled in a child's handwriting, Daddy, Grandma and me. Off to one side was a cloud with a stick figure labelled Real Mummy in Heaven. At the bottom of the page was another figure with an angry face labelled New Fake Mummy. I sank to the floor, clutching the drawing as the horrible reality began to dawn on me. This wasn't a simple misunderstanding or a child's confusion. Someone had been systematically teaching my daughter that I wasn't her mother, and based on Lily's words and behaviour, that someone was Eleanor. The drawing shaking in my hands, I made a decision to approach this systematically to understand exactly what had happened during my absence. My first step was to talk with Lily in a gentle, non-threatening way to learn what she believed about me and her real mommy. That afternoon, I asked Lily if she would help me sort through some of her old baby photos. Initially reluctant, she eventually agreed, sitting stiffly beside me on the couch as I opened the album. I started with pictures from the day she was born, showing her the image of me holding her in the hospital, exhausted but ecstatic. "Who is this with you when you were a baby?" I asked casually. Lily studied the photo, her brow furrowed. "That's the lady who pretends to be my mummy," she said finally. "Grandma said she takes care of me because my real mummy couldn't." My heart splintering, I kept my voice steady. "What else did Grandma tell you about your real mummy?" Lily's expression softened. "She said my real mummy loved me very much, but had to go to heaven when I was a baby. She had yellow hair like me and sang pretty songs. Grandma said the fake mummy tries to copy her but isn't as good." I struggled to maintain composure, recognizing the description as myself with details twisted. I continued through the album, noticing for the first time that several photos appeared altered. In some, my face was partially obscured by strategically placed stickers that hadn't been there before. In others, I appeared to have been cropped or positioned in shadow, while James and Lily were highlighted. When James returned from running errands, I confronted him with both the drawing and the altered photo album. His face paled, but he attempted to minimize the situation. "Kids have active imaginations, Marina. Mum's probably been telling her stories about angels watching over her or something. You know how religious she can be." His dismissive response only strengthened my resolve to uncover the truth. The next day, when Eleanor came to visit, I asked to speak with her privately, while James took Lily to the park. "I'd like to understand what's been happening while I was away." I began, keeping my tone conversational. "Lily seems to have some confusion about who I am." Eleanor's expression was a masterpiece of innocent concern. Children go through phases where they test boundaries and relationships. It's perfectly normal, especially when a mother is frequently absent. The subtle jab didn't escape me, but I pressed on. She specifically said, "You told her I'm not her real mother, that her real mother is in heaven." Eleanor sighed dramatically. I may have mentioned angels watching over her when she was upset about you leaving again. Children take things literally sometimes. Perhaps she misunderstood. I produced the drawing Lily had made. And this, did she misunderstand this too? Eleanor barely glanced at it. Children draw all sorts of fantasies. I'm sure it doesn't mean anything. Our conversation continued in this vein with Eleanor, deflecting and minimizing, while maintaining her facade of helpful grandmother. She never directly admitted to anything but continuously emphasized how difficult Lily found my absences and how confused children can become when their mothers prioritize work over family. That evening, I received an unexpected text from James's sister Amelia asking if we could meet for coffee the next day. Curious and desperate for allies, I agreed. Amelia arrived at the cafe looking uncomfortable, fidgeting with her coffee cup before finally meeting my eyes. I think you should know what's been happening, she said after several false starts. Mum's gone too far this time. After a few glasses of wine at a family dinner the previous week, Amelia revealed that Eleanor had been systematically working to undermine my relationship with Lily. It had started subtly with comments when I wasn't around about how sad it was that Lily's mother was always working, how different it was from when James was growing up with a mother always present. When I started traveling for work, Eleanor escalated her campaign. She would show Lily old family photos of James's childhood, emphasizing how his mother was always there for every moment, unlike some mothers who choose work instead. She began referring to herself as Lily's real grandmother, and to me as the woman who married Daddy. During my recent business trip, Eleanor had spent nearly every day at our house. According to Amelia, she had started telling Lily elaborate stories about her real mother, a fictional character who had died tragically, but had loved Lily perfectly during her short time with her. This real mother, according to Eleanor's fiction, had been replaced by me, described as someone who merely played the role of mother without the true love and dedication of the original. Mum even created a storybook, Amelia admitted, looking ashamed. She's good at drawing, you know. She made this little illustrated book about a child whose real mother becomes an angel and whose father brings home a new mother who doesn't know how to love properly. It's called The Fake Mother. She's been reading it to Lily at bedtime. I felt physically ill hearing this. How could James allow such psychological abuse of our daughter? James knows, Amelia confirmed, seeing the question in my eyes. He's caught between you and Mom. He tells himself she's just being helpful, that she doesn't mean any harm. Dad goes along with whatever Mom wants, and I've been too afraid of her anger to stand up to her. I'm sorry, Marina. It's gone too far. Armed with this information, I searched our house while James took Lily to his parents for dinner, despite my objections. In James's home office, I found the storybook Amelia had mentioned hidden in a drawer. The crude illustrations depicted a child with Lily's yellow hair and a mother figure, clearly meant to be me, drawn with an exaggerated angry expression and surrounded by symbols of work. The story described the fake mother as someone who cared more about her job than her child, who didn't know the child's favorite foods or games, who was just pretending to be a mother. In James's nightstand, I found his phone, which he had forgotten in his haste to leave. Guilt warring with determination, I unlocked it, using Lily's birth date, and found a series of messages between him and his mother that confirmed everything Amelia had told me, and worse. Mom, you need to tone it down, one message from James read. Marina will be home soon. His mother's response chilled me. The longer we wait, the harder it will be. Lily deserves a proper mother figure, not someone who chooses career over family. Remember how your sister turned out with my full attention. Marina's neglect will damage Lily permanently. Another exchange revealed that James had expressed some concerns. I'm not sure about telling her Marina isn't her real mother. That seems extreme. Eleanor's response was calculating. It's working beautifully. Children are impressionable at this age. By the time she's older, these early memories will be firmly established. Trust me, I know what's best for my granddaughter. Your father agrees. When James returned with Lily, who refused to meet my eyes and ran straight to her room, I confronted him with everything I had discovered. How could you allow this? I demanded, my voice shaking with rage and pain. Your mother has been systematically turning our daughter against me, and you've been complicit. James looked trapped, his expression cycling through guilt, defensiveness, and finally a weak attempt at justification. Mom means well, he insisted. She's just old-fashioned about family roles. She thinks children need their mothers to be fully present. She told our daughter, I'm not her real mother, I shouted, beyond caring if Lily overheard. She invented a story about a dead mother and cast me as an imposter. How is that meaning? Well, you're overreacting, James said, his voice taking on the patronizing tone I'd heard from Eleanor. Mum just wants what's best for Lily. And you have to admit, your new job has taken you away from her. In that moment, I saw clearly that James wasn't just caught between his mother and me. He had actively participated in the gaslighting and emotional manipulation. He had chosen his mother's distorted vision of family over the well-being of his wife and daughter. The betrayal was complete. That night, after my confrontation with James, experienced the most profound emotional collapse of my life. I locked myself in our guest bedroom, unable to bear being near him, and alternated between sobbing uncontrollably and sitting in numb shock. The systematic nature of the betrayal was almost impossible to comprehend. My husband and his family had conspired to erase me from my daughter's emotional life, to replace me with a fiction created by a controlling, jealous woman who saw my career as an affront to her traditional values. I replayed every interaction with Eleanor over the years, recognizing the subtle undermining that had been present from the beginning. The excessive interest in Lily's care, the comments about working mothers, the increasing presence in our home, all had been building to this moment. I thought of how James had facilitated it all, making excuses for his mother's behavior, encouraging me to travel for work while knowing what she was planning. Sleep evaded me as I struggled with the most painful question: how could I repair the damage done to Lily? My 8-year-old daughter now believed I was an imposter, a fake mother who had replaced some idealized true mother now in heaven. The psychological manipulation she had experienced was a form of emotional abuse, and I had no idea how to undo it. The next morning, with swollen eyes and a hollowed heart, I called in to work requesting emergency family leave. My supervisor, hearing the distress in my voice, approved it immediately. Then I made an appointment with Dr. Patricia Weldon, a child psychologist specializing in family trauma. Dr. Weldon's office was warm and inviting, designed to put both children and adults at ease. She listened intently as I explained the situation, occasionally making notes, but mostly maintaining eye contact that conveyed compassion without pity. What you're describing is a form of parental alienation, she explained when I finished. It's a process in which one parent or family member systematically undermines a child's relationship with another parent through manipulation, lies, and emotional pressure. In your case, it's particularly complex because it's being driven by the grandmother with your husband's implicit permission. What will this do to Lily? I asked the question that had been tormenting me. Dr. Weldon didn't sugarcoat her response. Children experiencing this kind of manipulation often develop trust issues, confusion about reality, loyalty conflicts, and anxiety. They may struggle with healthy attachment. But she added, seeing my expression crumble, children are also remarkably resilient. With proper intervention, many recover completely, especially when the alienation is addressed quickly. She recommended a specialized therapy approach for Lily and family therapy for all of us, though she expressed concern about James's willingness to participate, given his role in the situation. She also suggested I consult with a family law attorney to understand my legal options should the situation escalate. Following Dr. Weldon's advice, I met with a lawyer the next day. Samuel Greenfield specialized in complex custody cases and listened with a growing frown as I detailed what had happened. Document everything, he advised. Every interaction with your in-laws, every concerning comment from your daughter, every conversation with your husband about this issue. Save text messages, emails, anything that demonstrates this orchestrated campaign against you. If you need to pursue legal action to protect your relationship with your daughter, this documentation will be crucial. While I hoped it wouldn't come to legal intervention, I began keeping detailed records of everything related to the situation. I also followed Dr. Weldon's recommendation to maintain consistent, gentle presence with Lily without pushing her to accept me or challenging her beliefs directly. This was excruciating, having to carefully approach my own child as if she were a wounded animal, but I understood the importance of not adding to her confusion and distress. James alternated between minimizing the situation and attempting to gaslight me about my concerns. One moment he would acknowledge his mother had gone too far, the next he would suggest I was exaggerating or that my work absences had contributed to the problem. Your career choices have consequences, Marina, he said during one particularly heated exchange. Mum stepped in because she saw a need. Lily was missing her mother. I was gone for 2 weeks on a business trip that you encouraged me to take, I countered. That doesn't justify systematically convincing our daughter that I'm not her mother. Maybe if you were more present in her life, she wouldn't have been so easily confused, he responded, his mother's words coming from his mouth. 3 days after my return, Eleanor requested a family meeting to clear the air. Against my better judgment, I agreed, hoping to directly address the manipulation and begin setting boundaries. James's father Richard and sister Amelia would also attend, which I hoped might moderate Eleanor's behavior. I was wrong. The meeting held in their living room, where I was already at a psychological disadvantage, quickly devolved into an attack on my parenting and values. "I've only done what any loving grandmother would do," Eleanor declared, her expression a perfect mask of wounded innocence. "Lily needs stability and constant maternal presence. When you chose your career advancement over your family obligations, I simply filled the void. You told my daughter I'm not her real mother," I responded, fighting to keep my voice level. "You created an elaborate fiction about a dead mother and cast me as an imposter." Eleanor waved this away. "Children need stories to help them process complex emotions. Lily was distressed by your absence. I simply gave her a framework to understand why the woman who gave birth to her keeps leaving her." Richard, who had been silent until then, finally spoke up. "Eleanor means well, Marina. We come from a generation that believes mothers should put their children first. Your choices conflict with those values." "I've never stopped putting Lily first," I insisted. "Having a career doesn't mean I love her any less or that I'm neglecting her." Amelia, who had seemed supportive when we met for coffee, now appeared conflicted. "I think Mum went too far with some of the stories," she admitted, avoiding Eleanor's sharp glance. "But you have to understand, Marina, your frequent absences do affect Lily. Maybe if you scaled back your career ambitions until she's older." I looked around the room, suddenly understanding the full scope of what I was facing. This wasn't just Eleanor's campaign, it was a family ideology being enforced against me. Even Amelia, who had seemed to recognize the wrongness of the situation, ultimately believed that my career was the root problem, not the manipulation of my child. As the conversation continued, Eleanor revealed her true feelings in a moment of uncalculated honesty. "Women who put career before family don't deserve their children," she stated flatly. "If you truly loved Lily, you would have made different choices." The statement hung in the air, shocking even Richard and Amelia with its naked hostility. In that moment, I saw that Eleanor's actions weren't just about traditional values or concern for Lily. They stemmed from a deep-seated belief that I was unworthy of motherhood, because I refused to conform to her definition of a proper mother. The meeting ended with nothing resolved, but I had gained crucial insight into what I was facing. This wasn't a misunderstanding that could be cleared up with rational discussion. It was a deliberate, ideologically driven campaign to separate me from my daughter, because I represented a threat to Eleanor's worldview. As we left, Amelia pulled me aside briefly. "Mum's been talking to James about custody arrangements," she whispered. "She thinks he should divorce you and get full custody of Lily. Be careful." This final revelation completed the picture. Eleanor's manipulation of Lily wasn't just about controlling her granddaughter's upbringing, it was the first step in a larger plan to remove me from their family entirely. And based on James's behavior, he was at least considering it. Driving home in separate cars because I couldn't bear to be near James, I finally understood the full magnitude of the betrayal and the battle ahead of me. This wasn't just about reclaiming my place in Lily's heart. It was about fighting for my very identity as her mother against people who had systematically worked to erase it. The realization that my husband and his family were actively working to push me out of my daughter's life transformed something in me. The initial shock and heartbreak crystallized into a steely determination. If they wanted a fight, they would get one. I would not lose my daughter to Eleanor's twisted manipulation or James's spineless complicity. I took emergency leave from work, explaining to my supportive supervisor that I was dealing with a serious family crisis involving my daughter's well-being. With my career temporarily on hold, I focused all my energy on developing a strategy to rebuild my relationship with Lily and protect her from further psychological harm. My first step was consulting with additional experts. I met with Dr. Weldon again to develop a specific plan for Lily's recovery and with Samuel Greenfield to understand my legal options. I also reached out to a family therapist specializing in parental alienation cases, Dr. Marianne Foster, who offered invaluable insights into the psychological dynamics at play. "What's happening to your daughter is a form of psychological abuse," Dr. Foster explained. "Children's identities are formed in relation to their primary caregivers. By disrupting Lily's understanding of who you are to her, your mother-in-law has attacked the foundation of her sense of self. This isn't just about your relationship with Lily, it's about her fundamental psychological development." Armed with this understanding, I began documenting everything meticulously. I installed nanny cams in our home's common areas with proper legal advice to ensure they were lawful. I recorded conversations with James when he made revealing statements about his mother's actions or his own participation. I saved every text message, email, and voicemail related to the situation. I also began rebuilding my support network. Over the years, I realized Eleanor had subtly isolated us from my friends and even from my extended family. My college roommate Sarah, once my closest friend, had gradually been pushed to the periphery of our lives through Eleanor's constant invitations to family events that conflicted with plans we had made with Sarah and her husband. I called Sarah explaining what had happened and apologizing for my absence. Her immediate, unconditional support brought me to tears. I knew something was off with that woman, Sarah said fiercely. James's mum always gave me the creeps with how she looked at you like you were temporary. What can I do to help? With Sarah's encouragement, I reached out to other friends who had drifted away, finding similar support and outrage on my behalf. I also contacted my estranged sister Sophia, with whom I'd had a falling out years earlier, over what now seemed like trivial differences. Sophia, who worked as a child psychologist in Seattle, was horrified by my situation and immediately offered both professional guidance and sisterly support. "We are flying out tomorrow," she texted after our tearful reconciliation call. "Jake and I will stay as long as you need us. You're not facing this alone anymore." While rebuilding my external support system, I also worked on a careful plan to reconnect with Lily. Dr. Weldon had advised against directly challenging the narrative Eleanor had created, explaining that this could further distress and confuse Lily. Instead, I needed to create new positive experiences that would gradually help her recognize the truth of our relationship. I began with small gestures. I learned from Dr. Weldon that consistency was key, so I established predictable routines. Every morning, I made Lily breakfast and packed her favorite lunch regardless of whether she acknowledged me. Every afternoon, I was waiting when she returned from school with a snack and genuine interest in her day. I never pushed for affection, but remained warmly available whenever she was ready to engage. I discovered small openings through shared activities. Lily had always loved art, so I set up an art corner in our living room with quality supplies. Initially, she would only use them when I wasn't nearby, but gradually she began creating while I worked on my own projects at the same table, a comfortable silence developing between us. James watched these efforts with a mixture of guilt and resentment. He had expected me to either give up and accept the new dynamic or explode in anger, confirming Eleanor's portrayal of me as unstable and unfit. My steady, loving persistence seemed to unsettle him. The situation came to a head when Eleanor arrived unannounced one afternoon to take Lily for ice cream. I calmly informed her that we already had plans. "I'm her grandmother," she said sharply. "She wants to come with me, don't you, sweetheart?" Lily looked between us, the conflict visibly distressing her. Dr. Weldon had warned me about these loyalty tests and advised minimizing them whenever possible. "How about we all go together?" I suggested, keeping my voice light. "We can try that new place near the park." Eleanor's smile tightened. "I thought we could have special grandmother time. Marina, you're always welcome to have your turn later." I met her gaze steadily. "I appreciate your love for Lily, Eleanor, but from now on we'll need to schedule visits in advance. We're working with a family therapist who has emphasized the importance of consistent routines right now." Eleanor's facade cracked momentarily, revealing the anger beneath. "You can't keep me from my granddaughter. James would never allow it." "This isn't about keeping you from Lily," I replied calmly. "It's about ensuring her schedule is predictable and her home environment is stable. You're welcome to be part of that within appropriate boundaries." The confrontation ended with Eleanor leaving in a fury, but it marked a turning point. I had finally stood up to her, directly establishing that I was Lily's mother and primary caretaker, not a disposable figure whose role could be usurped. That evening, a major breakthrough occurred. Lily was getting ready for bed when she suddenly asked, "What did my real mummy's voice sound like?" The question broke my heart, but also presented an opportunity. Instead of directly challenging the fake mother narrative, I asked gently, "Would you like me to sing you the lullaby I used to sing when you were a baby?" She then nodded cautiously, and I began singing the same lullaby I had sung to her since infancy, the one my mother had sung to me. As the familiar melody filled the room, I watched Lily's expression shift from guarded curiosity to confusion, and then to a dawning recognition. "That's the song from my dreams," she whispered when I finished. "I remembered it when you were gone." "Yes, sweetheart," I said softly. "I've been singing it to you since you were tiny." She studied my face intently, the first time she had really looked at me since my return. Did my real mummy sing that too? I took a calculated risk, based on Dr. Weldon's advice about not directly contradicting Eleanor's fiction too abruptly. "The mummy who has loved you every single day of your life sings that song," I told her. "The mummy who held you when you were born, who kissed your scraped knees, who knows that you like the crusts cut off your sandwiches, and that you're afraid of thunderstorms but love the rain. Something shifted in Lily's eyes, a flicker of doubt in the story she had been told. She didn't say anything more, but that night, for the first time since my return, she allowed me to tuck her in and kiss her forehead before sleep. The next morning, James confronted me about my interaction with his mother. Mum called in tears, saying you barred her from seeing Lily, he accused. I showed him the audio recording of our actual conversation from the nanny cam, his mother's manipulative tactics clearly captured. I've documented everything, James, I told him. Every lie, every manipulation, every attempt to alienate me from my daughter. You have a choice to make now. You can continue enabling your mother's emotional abuse of our daughter, or you can be the father Lily needs and help her heal from the damage that's been done. James seemed genuinely shocked by the recording, perhaps hearing his mother's manipulation clearly for the first time. This confrontation forced him to recognize that he could no longer play both sides. He had to choose between his mother's distorted narrative and the reality of what was happening to his daughter. His decision, when it came, was disappointing but not surprising. I need some time to think, he said. Maybe I should stay with my parents for a few days to clear my head. In his absence, I consulted with Samuel Greenfield again, securing temporary emergency custody orders that prevented Eleanor from taking Lily without my permission and establishing a documented visitation schedule for James. I also filed for a restraining order against Eleanor based on the psychological harm her contact with Lily had caused. When James discovered these legal maneuvers, his reaction revealed how deeply Eleanor's influence ran. You're trying to keep my family away from our daughter, he shouted during a phone call. Mum was right about you all along. I'm protecting our daughter from psychological abuse, I replied calmly. The custody arrangement is temporary and you still have regular visitation rights. If you want to be part of decisions about Lily's well-being, you need to join us in family therapy and acknowledge the harm that's been done. While James struggled with his conflicted loyalties, I focused on gathering evidence and building my case. The most damning proof came during a recorded conversation with Eleanor when she believed we were alone. Frustrated by the legal barriers I had erected, she finally revealed her true intentions. You were never meant to be permanent, she said coldly. I knew from the moment James brought you home that you weren't mother material. A real mother sacrifices everything for her children. Your career ambitions disqualified you from the start. I've simply been waiting for the right moment to help James see the truth. This recorded admission became the foundation for the restraining order, which a judge granted after reviewing the evidence. Eleanor was legally prohibited from contacting Lily or coming within 500 feet of our home or her school. The restraining order proved necessary when Eleanor attempted to pick Lily up from school, claiming a family emergency. Thanks to my advance warning to the school administration about the situation, they denied her access and called me immediately. This incident strengthened my legal position and began to shake James's defense of his mother's actions. With Eleanor legally kept at a distance and James forced to confront the reality of his mother's behavior, I could focus on the most important task, helping my daughter heal from the psychological manipulation she had experienced and rebuilding our bond one day at a time. With Eleanor legally barred from contact with Lily and James forced to acknowledge the harm his mother had caused, we entered a new phase of our journey, one focused on healing. Dr. Weldon recommended a specialized therapist, Dr. Sarah Chen, who had extensive experience with children who had experienced parental alienation. Dr. Chen's office was a bright space filled with toys, art supplies, and comfortable furniture designed to put children at ease. During their first session, Lily was withdrawn and anxious, clinging to her belief that I was not her real mother, despite the cracks beginning to show in that narrative. I'm going to see Lily twice a week, Dr. Chen explained after that initial meeting. We'll use play therapy and art therapy to help her process her feelings and gradually understand what happened. I'd also like to see you separately once a week to discuss strategies for supporting her at home. These therapy sessions became the backbone of our recovery process. Dr. Chen gently helped Lily explore the conflicting stories she had been told using dolls and role play to externalize her confusion and fear. Rather than directly telling Lily that Eleanor had lied, Dr. Chen created a safe space for Lily to discover inconsistencies in the narrative herself. At home, I followed Dr. Chen's guidance, maintaining consistent routines and responding with steady love to Lily's fluctuating emotions. Some days she would allow small moments of connection, a shared laugh over breakfast, accepting my help with homework, allowing me to brush her hair. Other days she would retreat into confusion and resistance, insisting that I wasn't her real mother or demanding to see Grandma. These setbacks were painful, but Dr. Chen assured me they were normal. Children who've experienced this kind of manipulation don't heal in a straight line, she explained. There will be good days and hard days. The key is your consistent presence and love, regardless of her behavior. My sister Sophia's presence proved invaluable during this time. Having postponed her return to Seattle indefinitely, she moved into our guest room and provided both emotional support for me and another stable, loving adult in Lily's life. As a child psychologist herself, Sophia understood the dynamics at play and often helped me navigate particularly difficult moments. Remember that Lily's rejection isn't personal, she would remind me after especially hard days. It's a response to trauma and confusion. Your job right now isn't to make her acknowledge you as her mother, but to show her what healthy maternal love looks like, consistently and without conditions. Meanwhile, I worked to create new positive memories to replace the distorted narrative Eleanor had created. Rather than trying to directly contradict the stories about a real mother in heaven, I focused on building new connections through shared experiences. We started taking weekend trips to places Lily had never been before, creating memories that Eleanor couldn't have tainted. We developed new traditions like Sunday morning nature walks and Thursday night board games. Photographs became an important tool in our healing process. I created a new family album, filling it with pictures from Lily's life, chronologically with me, clearly present from the very beginning. Without directly addressing Eleanor's lies, I would casually share memories from the photos. Remember this day at the beach when you were 3. You were so afraid of the waves until we held hands and jumped over them together. These concrete visual reminders of our shared history gradually helped Lily reconstruct an accurate understanding of our relationship. The cognitive dissonance between Eleanor's fiction and the photographic evidence of my presence throughout her life created space for questions and realizations. James, meanwhile, was undergoing his own painful journey. At Dr. Foster's insistence, he began individual therapy to understand his role in enabling his mother's behavior. The therapist helped him recognize patterns from his own childhood, where Eleanor had used similar manipulation tactics to control him, creating unhealthy loyalty binds and undermining his autonomy. After a month of separate living arrangements, James asked to join our family therapy sessions. Though wary, I agreed, knowing that Lily's healing would be easier if both parents were aligned in supporting her. These sessions were often tense and difficult. James struggled to fully acknowledge his complicity, alternating between genuine remorse and defensive justification. The family therapist skillfully guided these conversations, helping James recognize how his divided loyalties had harmed his daughter. I didn't realize how much damage was being done, he admitted during a particularly breakthrough session. I told myself Mum was just being loving and helpful. I didn't want to see that she was trying to replace Marina because that would mean confronting her, and I've never been able to stand up to her. As James began to understand the psychological dynamics that had made him vulnerable to his mother's manipulation, he became more protective of Lily and more supportive of my efforts to help her heal. He maintained his relationship with his parents, but established firm boundaries about discussions of me and decisions regarding Lily. Richard, to my surprise, became an unexpected ally. Unlike Eleanor, who continued to insist she had done nothing wrong, Richard began to recognize the harm caused by his wife's actions. He reached out to me privately, expressing genuine remorse. Eleanor has always been controlling, but I never thought she would go this far, he admitted. I failed Lily by not stopping this when I saw the signs. I failed you too, Marina, and I'm deeply sorry. His apology, while welcome, highlighted how the entire family system had enabled Eleanor's behavior over many years. Richard's passive acceptance had allowed her controlling tendencies to escalate to the point of psychological abuse. It was a painful reminder that healing would require changes not just in Eleanor, but in the entire family dynamic. About 2 months into our healing journey, a breakthrough moment occurred. Lily and I were looking through old videos I had found, including footage from her 3rd birthday. The video showed me helping her blow out candles, laughing as she smeared frosting on my nose. Lily watched intently, then looked up at me with confusion in her eyes. "You were there for my birthdays?" she asked hesitantly. "Grandma said my real mummy wasn't there for my birthdays." I took a deep breath following Dr. Chen's advice to acknowledge her confusion without directly attacking Eleanor. "I've been there for every one of your birthdays, sweetheart," I said gently. "Here, let me show you." I pulled out more videos birthday by birthday showing my consistent presence in her life. As she watched, Lily's expression shifted from confusion to recognition. "That's you," she said slowly, pointing to me in the videos. "You're singing the special song. You're the one who always makes the heart-shaped pancakes. Yes, baby, that's me. I've always been here loving you." Lily studied my face, comparing it to the images on screen. "Are you my real mummy?" she whispered finally. "I am your only mummy," I confirmed, tears filling my eyes. "I have loved you every single day since you were born." She didn't say anything more that day, but that night, for the first time since my return from London, Lily asked me to sing the lullaby before bed. As I sang, she watched my face intently, as if memorizing it and comparing it to some internal image. When I finished, she reached out tentatively and touched my cheek. "I remember now," she said simply before closing her eyes. That moment marked a turning point, though not an end to our journey. Lily still had questions and confusion, still had days when Eleanor's planted narratives resurfaced. But increasingly, she began to trust her own memories and experiences over the fictional story she had been told. As Lily's healing progressed, I had to make decisions about my own career and our family's future. The marketing firm had been supportive during my emergency leave, but I needed to determine whether returning to my previous role, with its travel requirements, was compatible with Lily's needs for stability and consistent presence. After much reflection and discussion with my therapist, I negotiated a modified role that allowed me to work remotely 3 days a week and limited travel to quarterly trips of no more than 3 days. This compromise allowed me to maintain my career trajectory while prioritizing Lily's emotional well-being. James and I also had to decide the future of our marriage. The betrayal had fundamentally damaged our trust, but we shared a commitment to Lily's well-being. After months of individual and couples therapy, we cautiously agreed to attempt reconciliation with clear boundaries and expectations. "I don't know if I can ever fully trust you again," I told him honestly, "but I'm willing to try for Lily's sake, if you can demonstrate that you've truly changed and understand what happened." James moved back home on a probationary basis with continued therapy, both individually and as a couple. While our relationship remained fragile, we established new patterns of communication and a united approach to parenting that prioritized Lily's emotional health. The most difficult ongoing challenge was managing Eleanor's continued attempts to circumvent the restraining order and re-establish contact with Lily. Despite legal consequences, she sent gifts, letters, and once even attempted to approach Lily at a school event before being stopped by alert teachers. These boundary violations required constant vigilance and reinforced the need for clear legal protections. They also provided painful evidence to James that his mother's behavior was not simply misguided love, but a persistent pattern of control and manipulation that prioritized her needs over Lily's well-being. The healing process was neither quick nor linear. There were setbacks and breakthroughs, moments of connection and periods of distance. But slowly, consistently, Lily began to reintegrate her understanding of me as her mother, and our bond, though tested, ultimately grew stronger through the process of recovery. By the 6-month mark, Lily was consistently calling me mummy again, seeking me out for comfort when hurt or afraid, and incorporating me into her descriptions of family. While the scars of Eleanor's manipulation remained visible in moments of insecurity or confusion, they were gradually fading as new, healthy experiences replaced the distorted narrative she had been taught. As we approached the 1-year anniversary of my return from London and the discovery of Eleanor's deception, I could finally see the path forward more clearly. The healing journey would continue, but we had survived the darkest moments and emerged with a deeper understanding of the resilience of love and truth in the face of manipulation and lies. 1 year after discovering my mother-in-law's devastating campaign to convince my daughter I wasn't her real mother, our lives had transformed in ways I could never have imagined. The journey of healing hadn't been easy, but looking back I could see how far we had come. Lily, now 9, had blossomed again. Her therapy with Dr. Chen had gradually decreased from twice weekly to monthly check-ins. While she still occasionally had questions about that confusing period, she had firmly re-established her understanding of me as her mother. Our bond, tested by Eleanor's manipulation, had ultimately grown stronger through the process of healing together. One afternoon, as we walked home from school, Lily slipped her hand into mine, unprompted, a small gesture that still filled me with immense gratitude, given how far we had come. "Mum," she said thoughtfully, "I remember when I thought you weren't my real mother. It feels like a strange dream now." I squeezed her hand gently. "It was a confusing time, sweetheart. Grandma Eleanor told me stories that weren't true, didn't she?" She asked, her perception now clear. "Yes, she did," I confirmed, following our therapist's advice to be honest without demonizing Eleanor. "Sometimes adults make very bad choices when they want to control things." Lily nodded, processing this. "I'm glad I know the truth now, and I'm glad you're my mum. My only mum." These moments of clarity and connection had become more frequent, each one healing another small piece of the wound Eleanor had created. My relationship with James had undergone its own transformation. After months of therapy, both individually and as a couple, we had made the difficult decision to attempt rebuilding our marriage. This wasn't a choice I made lightly. The betrayal had cut deep, but I recognized that James had been as much a victim of his mother's manipulation as he had been a participant in it. His childhood had been shaped by Eleanor's controlling nature, creating deeply ingrained patterns of compliance and conflict avoidance. While this didn't excuse his role in allowing her to manipulate Lily, it helped me understand how it had happened and evaluate whether change was possible. The James who emerged from intensive therapy was markedly different from the man who had stood by while his mother poisoned our daughter against me. He had learned to recognize Eleanor's manipulation tactics and developed the strength to establish and maintain boundaries. Most importantly, he had fully acknowledged his failure to protect Lily and committed to never allowing such harm to come to her again. "I've spent my whole life trying to please my mother," he admitted during one particularly breakthrough session. "I justified her behavior, made excuses, looked the other way, because confronting her felt impossible. I failed both of you by not being strong enough to stand up to her, and I have to live with that knowledge every day." His genuine remorse and demonstrated change over time slowly rebuilt enough trust for us to cautiously move forward together. While our marriage would never be the same in some ways, it had become stronger, built on a new foundation of honest communication and shared values. The boundaries we established with James's family remained firm. Eleanor was still legally prohibited from unsupervised contact with Lily. After multiple violations of the original restraining order, the court had imposed stricter conditions with serious consequences for further infractions. Richard James's father had undergone his own reckoning. After decades of enabling Eleanor's controlling behavior, he had finally recognized the harm it had caused. He now saw Lily only during supervised family therapy sessions, where he was working to build a healthy relationship with his granddaughter without his wife's toxic influence. "I failed my son by not protecting him from Eleanor's manipulation, and I failed Lily by allowing history to repeat itself," he acknowledged during one of these sessions. "I'm trying to break that pattern now, even at this late stage of my life." His efforts, while imperfect, were sincere. Unlike Eleanor, who continued to insist she had done nothing wrong, Richard had taken responsibility for his role and was working to make amends. Amelia James's sister had also made significant changes. Our relationship, once strained by her complicity in Eleanor's schemes, had developed into a genuine friendship as she worked through her own history of being controlled by her mother. She had become a supportive aunt to Lily and an ally in maintaining healthy family boundaries. My own career had found a new equilibrium. The modified role I had negotiated with my company allowed me to maintain my professional identity while prioritizing Lily's need for stability and consistent presence. I worked remotely 3 days a week and limited travel to quarterly trips of no more than 3 days, with extensive preparation and support systems in place during those absences. This balance hadn't come without sacrifice. I had declined opportunities that would have advanced my career more rapidly, but would have required extensive travel or relocation. Yet these weren't sacrifices made under pressure from Eleanor's distorted values, but conscious choices that aligned with my own priorities as a mother and professional. Perhaps the most unexpected positive outcome of this painful journey was the reconnection with my sister Sophia. After years of estrangement over what now seemed like trivial differences, Sophia had become an essential part of our lives. Her background in child psychology had been invaluable during Lily's healing process. But more importantly, her unconditional love and support had reminded me of the importance of authentic family connections. Sophia had relocated to Boston permanently, taking a position at a local university. She had dinner with us weekly and had become the loving aunt Lily deserved. Our relationship had healed completely stronger for having weathered the separation and reunion. The support network I had rebuilt during the crisis had become permanent fixtures in our lives. My friend Sarah and her husband now joined us for monthly game nights. Colleagues who had offered support during my leave had become friends outside of work. These authentic connections provided Lily with examples of healthy relationships based on mutual respect and genuine caring. Looking back on this painful journey, I recognized how easily a child's perception of reality could be manipulated by adults they trust. Eleanor had exploited Lily's natural love for her grandmother and her developmental vulnerability to plant a false narrative that had nearly destroyed our mother-daughter bond. The experience had taught me to be vigilantly protective of Lily's relationships, while still allowing her the freedom to form her own connections. This awareness had led me to become involved in a support group for parents experiencing similar forms of family alienation. Sharing my story and the strategies that had helped us heal provided both purpose from our pain and community with others who truly understood the experience. I had even begun speaking at professional conferences for family therapists and social workers, helping to raise awareness about the devastating impact of parental alienation. On the anniversary of my return from London, we held a small family celebration of healing. Just the three of us, plus Sophia, a quiet acknowledgement of how far we had come. As we shared a meal in our backyard, Lily spontaneously proposed a toast. To my real mum, who never gave up on me even when I was confused, she said, raising her glass of sparkling cider with a wisdom beyond her years. Later that evening, after Lily had gone to bed, I sat on our porch swing, reflecting on the journey we had travelled. The wounds hadn't healed completely, and perhaps they never would entirely. Lily still occasionally had nightmares about being separated from me. James and I still had moments where trust felt fragile. The legal battles with Eleanor continued to flare up periodically. Yet amid these ongoing challenges, we had found a peace I once thought impossible. Not a perfect resolution, where all damage was undone, but an honest healing that acknowledged the scars while refusing to be defined by them. We had learned that love does indeed persevere, even through the darkest betrayals. I think about that word real so often. Now, what makes a real mother, a real family, a real connection? Eleanor tried to define these things through blood ties, traditional roles, and constant presence. But I've come to understand that what makes relationships real is their authenticity, not their perfection or adherence to someone else's standards. A real mother isn't defined by whether she works outside the home or stays with her children all day. She isn't defined by whether she fits a traditional mold or breaks it. A real mother is defined by her authentic love, her commitment to her child's well-being above her own ego, and her willingness to fight for her child's emotional health even when it would be easier to give up. By that definition, I have always been Lily's real mother. And now, after our painful journey through deception and healing, she knows it too. If you're experiencing similar family manipulation or alienation, please know you're not alone. Share your stories in the comments below and let's create a community of support. Remember to subscribe for more personal stories of family healing and resilience. Have you ever had to establish boundaries with family members who crossed lines? I'd love to hear your experiences. Thank you for walking this journey with me today, and may you find strength and healing in your own family relationship.